First things first, in terms of me doing this daily, I had my best intentions. I know they're not perfect. I'm umming and ahhing and repeating words, and sometimes there's no flow, there's no stories. It's boring sometimes, but it is what it is. No wonder that the average person can't do this alone. But I do recommend, if you are thinking of doing this, jump on board with me. I mean, I feel like a lone soldier. I am enjoying it. It's good recording this, Jen, and there's no regrets at all. Hey everyone, it's Opie here for another episode where I talk about health, wealth, and happiness. So I wanted to give you an update on how this particular podcast is going and the way I've structured it and how I am finding it in terms of my own realizations. So first things first, in terms of me doing this daily, I had my best intentions and it hasn't worked out that way. And I didn't realize it at the time, but and this is not me making excuses or me wanting for you to, feel sorry for me, but I didn't realize how much my migraines impacted my day-to-day life. So in other aspects of my life, what I've realized is when I end up getting a migraine, that day is pretty much written off. So usually if it's an important day and I've got stuff planned, I end up having to take an Immigrant and just run through the day. But usually I'm a zombie. Like I'm like coasting through. It's very unproductive day. And on one of those days, if I had to do a podcast, it's just not gonna happen. I barely pick up any phone calls. It's very unproductive. If I'm at work, I get through it. I just get through it. And yeah, that's it. And on the days that I'm okay, what I usually do is I guess I compensate and I work twice or three times as hard as as the average person to just make up for it. And I do end up doing fine. So going back to the podcast, that's actually what I've been doing, shooting, on the days that I just miss it. I can't do it. And on the other days, I end up doing 2-3 podcasts in one day and just bamming it out because I've already sort of had the thoughts already in my head and I'm able to just talk it through. Sure, I know they're not perfect. I'm umming and ahhing and repeating words, and sometimes there's no flow, there's no stories. It is boring sometimes, but it is what it is. And in terms of structuring the podcast, I've realized there's a bit of work in the background. I mean, no wonder that the average person can't do this alone. Like, unless you dedicate a full, hour or two, and I'm talking about solid hour. Say it takes 15 minutes to do the podcast, actually, I'm going to say 2 hours because you need at least another hour to edit it if you're good at editing it, right? And I'm being very optimistic. And another, half an hour to do social media stuff. The average person, I'm just laying it out for you right now. If you want to do something like this, and you're trying to do it solo, you're going to have to dedicate at least 2 hours of your time. That's a big ask for someone who might be already busy. So just keep that in mind if you are thinking of doing this. Whereas I've made my life a little bit easier, where all I'm doing is recording and trying to help my editor and my social media manager and my graphic designer do the whole flow for me, which has helped me a lot because I'm just making sure that the work is churned through correctly and just providing feedback here and there. But there's a massive learning curve for me as well, because I got to learn how to make sure that the titles are right. The thumbnails apparently is a big thing. I didn't realize it's such a big thing, but apparently it's a big thing. And for the type of work that I'm doing in terms of just recording this vlog, apparently it's not a big deal, but for everyday YouTubers, it is. So I don't know, I'm looking at trying to find a happy medium here. So that's this vlog, but I am finding it's okay. I'm okay just jumping on and just speaking to you like I'm speaking to a friend, and hopefully giving something in return, and eventually even the channel grows, I'll get some feedback from you all as well, and then it'll be a mutually beneficial thing where we're both learning. In regards to the Victory Line podcast, the weekly podcast that I plan to release, the only hurdle that I'm getting there is trying to find appropriate, interesting people that I can sit down and have conversations with, because firstly, my calendar and their calendar has to align. They have to find time as well. I mean, because it could potentially be 2-3 hours dedication of their time, right? Because if we're having a proper conversation and it's a deep, in-depth conversation with meaningful stories and so forth, it can get to that length. So I'm almost on the verge of hiring someone to do some outreach for me, meaning, reaching out to people who might want to jump on the podcast with me. I mean, I will provide them with a list going, hey, these are the people who thinking of wanted to interview, or these are the topics that I'm interested in. Obviously, health, wealth, and happiness, very broad topics. But if you can find someone who is okay with talking about these topics, let's get them on board. Let's have a chat first, but let's do it. So possibly that's on the radar as well. But other than that, the long form podcast is actually going quite well. It's actually allowing me to catch up with very interesting people, having open discussions and dialogue even before and after the podcast. So it's been a wonderful experience, to the point that I didn't realize there would be all these extra benefits to it, which is pretty cool. So I'm enjoying that. Um, in terms of equipment wise, I haven't really upgraded the tripods yet. So it's still my, I've got one expensive tripod and two not so tripod, but they've been okay. But one thing I do want to get is one of those things that you plug into the car. You know how when I've done a couple of these vlogs in the car, but it's basically sitting on a tripod and it's jiggling around. It's not safe, and it's only a matter of time until I get done by the cops. So I need something to stick onto the window where it doesn't move, but I haven't found a good device yet. I'm sure I will find one, but that's one thing I need to get. And I need to get those handheld things where I can stick these into. Apparently, so you can get this gadget, and I looked it up, it's only $20-$30, and you put this on and there's a fluffy thing that goes on top of it, and you hold it like a normal mic. So for example, if I'm outside and I don't want to make too much noise, I can use one of them. Or I guess I can put the fluffy thing on this one as well. But either way, those are the sort of only tins of equipment that I need to get, which is pretty good, right? So I've been okay. I'm quite happy with the equipment that I've got so far. I'm trying to not overly spend any money just for the sake of it. There's no point. Yeah, possibly another light, but who knows? But I do recommend, if you are thinking of doing this, jump on board with me. I mean, I feel like a lone soldier just talking to you guys by myself, but I am enjoying it. I am enjoying it because I am having to sort of plan this out a bit more, be meaningful, and actually, I mean, it's good. It's good recording this, Jen, and there's no regrets at all. Before I wrap this up, is there anything that I can recommend in terms of a book? So I've read a couple of books lately. No, not for this one. All right. I'll backtrack. Don Miller has a few books. I've gone through them, but I'm not sure how valuable they will be to the wider audience. So if you want to check out Donald Miller, they're pretty good, but how broad it is in terms of recommendations, they're just more sort of business books that if you're interested, go for it. All right, cool. Thanks. This is just a podcast sort of update for both of them, but I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.